Hey everyone, this is Mr. Isometric, and in this video we are going to talk about inverse kinematics bone constraint. So first let me have the armature. So let us add a bone. Let's grab this bone up like this. Now I'll select the head, and then whenever you extrude any bone from the head, it is going to be disconnected. So I'll just make 3 bones like this. Let's have another bone over here. Let's have a bone over here. Okay, there you go. Let's go into the pose mode, and suppose we just add the bone constraint to any random bone. But before that, let's go into the armature and then turn on the name and axis. Let's make the axis 0.5. Now I highly recommend you to rename your bones. If you don't want to do that, then I guess you can just turn on the names. You can also go into the wireframe mode to check your local axis. So my Y is pointing down. It matters in some cases, but in some it doesn't. As I said, let us suppose we add a constraint, inverse kinematics constraint, randomly to any bone. So if I add it to the last bone, it will connect its linkage. By the way, if you guys can see this orange guide line over here, it is going till over here. Now the reason why it is going till over there is because the bone number 1 is the root right now, so that's why it's like the first bone in the whole hierarchy. That's why it is going till over there. You can set the minimum chain length over here. So suppose if I just want the chain length to go till over there, I can set it up from this chain length function. Now I'll just keep it at 0 for now. And now let's grab this bone and see what happens. So if I press G to grab, and you'll see that other bones just starts moving on themselves. Now let's remove it from over here, and let's try to assign it over here. And if I grab it, now it is moving a little bit more like a character controller leg, which is a good effect. Other bones are following nicely. They are also following in the other plane. You could use this constraint like this, but adding a target and pole would actually affect your experience with this constraint a lot better. And to add them, I highly recommend again to rename your bones, but if you don't, it's your choice. I can now I'll just first remove the like the constraint from over here, and let's just press Alt G and Alt R so that we clear any rotations and position changes that we made to the bones. So now let's go into the edit mode. Now if you have your character, like if you want to control, suppose your character has feet features, then after that select its head and then just extrude that bone like this. So I just have extruded in the Y. Now its rotation doesn't matter yet. So as you can see, this bone is actually connected, but we don't want that. So let's just press Alt P like this and then do clear parents. Now let's go into the pose mode again. As you can see, we have disconnected that bone. Okay, just after the feet, this bone, we want this bone to follow this bone with the help of inverse kinematics. So let's just select bone number 3 over there, and then add a inverse kinematics. Now inside the target, first it will select the armature, and inside the armature we want to select bone number 5, which is this one. Now once you do that, this bone, it will now go from orange to yellowish green. And now if you select the bone number 5 and move it, you'll see that my bone number 3 is moving towards bone number 5, and it is following it everywhere. And as you can see, if we go out of the bounds, it doesn't follow it anymore. So unless you turn on stretching, if you turn on some kind of stretching on any of these bones or even this bone, it is not going to follow it through over there, but it is still pointing on towards the bone number 5. So now why did I separate my feet? So now I can just rotate feet manually. As you can see, I cannot rotate the target bone, and if I do, there will be some you can say pivot issues or issues in the future. If we start animating it with the target bone. So to avoid that, mostly you should try not to rotate these bones after you add IK. So yeah, now this feet, you can control it with the target so that you only have to Suppose you're animating it. Okay, let me just give an example what I mean. So if you're moving this, then you'll have to animate two bones separately. Like you'll have to animate its rotation and then its position, again its rotation. And to just avoid this issue, there is one more thing that you can do. You can add a copy rotation and then assign that to the bone number 5 as a target, and then our bone number 5 will control bone number 4. Now this is going in much more in the character controller side, and I have already talked about it in another video, so do check it out. Link will be in the description below. So in this video we are just talking about the inverse kinematics. So that is how the target bone works. Now let's just go into the edit mode and let's check out the pole bone. So mostly this bone should be near your knee. So I guess not that random, but we don't have a knee joint yet. So I guess this might be our knee joint. So you know what, I'll just select that one, extrude Y like this. And we want this bone to be separate as well. So let's just do Alt P and then do clear parent. Size, by the way, size of target and pole doesn't matter until you're watching them, like it is visible in your viewport. So I'll just bring it in front, something like this. Now let's go into the pose mode. Now you need to select bone number 6, as we can see, as our pole. So first it will select the armature and then it will select bone number 6 as our pole. Now as you can see that my bones, they just got rotated by 90 degree, which is weird, but it is actually not that weird. Now you'll see in some videos that they will ask you to like add a pole angle of either 90 or 180 or negative 90 or negative 180 depending upon your situation, but I like to avoid that from the beginning. Now what pole angle is actually the twist moment. Now as you can see, this is the pole angle, basically the rotation around the local y-axis of the bone. That is basically the pole. And I think this bone has it weird. So to check it out, let's go into the edit mode, and if I press N to the properties panel, you'll see that if we select any of the bone, we can see the properties of those bones. So we can see the radius, we can see the roll, and this roll is actually the pole angle. So it is right now minus 180 degree for this bone. And the reason why is that it is making its z to point in the same plane as everyone else, because the way inverse kinematics is calculated, it is calculated with this axis orientation. So that is why it is important. Now instead of manually typing in the numbers over here, there is an easy way of doing manually adding, fixing the poles. So in the pose mode, you can see my bone, they just get rotated like this in this plane. So I'll just go into the edit mode, select everything. Let's press 3 to go into the side view, or you can just click on over here. Now let's press Shift N. So this will recalculate the roll for each bone. Now you could go ahead and choose any of this. I'll just like to go and make it a view axis like this. So now every bones is now the local axis. Z is pointing in that direction. Y is pointing up, Y is pointing down towards there, and X is pointing forward. Okay. Now if I go into the pose mode again, you'll see that without even touching the pole angle, I just fixed that issue. This might break your existing animation, so do be careful. If your existing animation, if your character or model has existing animation and it uses inverse kinematics, it is better to just use the pole angle to fix any orientation issues if you have. So yeah, now let us assign the pole, and I guess we already have assigned the pole. Now what does the pole do? Well, if I select the pole now and if I move it, you'll see that my knee is basically following that pole. So we are dynamically controlling the roll of each and every bone with this pole angle. Okay, now the next thing is the iterations. Now these iterations, you can keep them at default 500. Those are basically how many iterations computer will do before deciding the angle and the position. Now increasing them might uh, make changes looks a bit different, but not really. So I don't think anyone changes this values, to be honest. But yeah, if you want, you can crank them up and check if it is fixing any of your issues. So now let us talk about the chain length. Now I think I already talked about it, but still, now as you can see, my when I move my target, you'll see that it is also moving this bone. But suppose if I don't want it, then I can just manually make it 2, so it is now controlling 2 bones above the target bone. So you can also see for the guideline a reference line over there. So now if I grab it, you'll see that that bone is moving, and if I grab this, that bone is moving as well. Okay, awesome. Now there is also one more thing that I wanted to show you all. Let us say I don't have the pole anymore, and if I grab this target bone beyond its you can say origin, so this bone might flip upside down or back right up. That could happen, but I think the origin is over there, that's why it is not happening right now. But yeah, if that flipping issue also gets solved with adding a pole angle. But there is also one drawback, like if you have a mechanical rig, in also in the bone properties, like you see each bone has its own bone property, and this inverse kinematics section here, you can decide the stiffness and stuff like that. Now this locking, we will talk about it soon, but if you have mechanical rigs and if you try to lock any of the axis, then the pole will actually not work, which is really sad. But I guess that's how the calculations work, that's why they are not working. So let's talk about this as well. As you can see, I can move my target and all of the bones are moving with it. So let's talk about these inverse kinematic section. So we can see the first thing is IK stretch. So if I select this bone and if I make it stretch to the maximum, like make the IK stretch 1. Now if I select this bone and grab it, you'll see that that bone is now stretching. Now, this is useful when you are going to rig a stylized character that has stretching in it. And if you don't, then it's fine. You can just make it 0. Now, the next thing is locking axis. Now, each of this local axis, as you can see, if I grab it on the X, you'll see that this is not the desired movement for a leg. Like mostly it is not desired. So what you can do is you can either clamp it or basically totally stop it from happening in the first place. So the lock IK axis, in that if you select the, suppose I don't want it to rotate on the X, so I'll just lock the X. Now the IK will not be calculated for the X and it will not move at all. Now it is not moving in the X. Definitely the results are different. So let me just make it also on the Z axis. So it will now only try to roll on the Y. So let me check if it works. Oh wait, we do have a pole in this situation, right? So let us remove the pole and now let's move it. Now as you can see, when we remove the pole, it is actually working. So it is only rolling right now on the Y axis, as you can see. Where it is, okay, there you go. So we have locked it on the X and we have locked it on the Z, and it is only allowed to roll on the Y. So when I grab the target, it is only rolling around it. It is not moving at all. Now if I unfreeze the Z1 and if I move it, as you can see, it will only like move in this plane, but it will never move in the X, but it will roll. So it is clamped in the X. Now let us do the same with the other bones. So let's clamp them on the X and Y. Let's do the same, X and Y. And then for this as well, X and Y. So now if I grab this, you'll see that they are stuck in a single plane. If I move them in the X, the target bone, it is not working anymore. And now if I grab it, it is staying in that plane itself. Now this is really handy in some situations where you have mechanical rigs, as I explained. So that's how you use this lock constraint. Now let me just make it undo everything. Now the next thing is the stiffness. Now if I just increase the stiffness to something really higher, but not one, because one stiffness will mean that it is not moving at all. So as you can see, when you make a bone stiff, it will try to resist the movement, like that bone will move the least amount. So the root will try to move the least. So in usual cases, we don't move our the middle bone that much, I guess. So we can increase its stiffness. We can increase this stiffness as well, but really low. Now this gives us some pretty realistic results. Depending upon your situation, you might need to increase and decrease this stiffness value. So yeah, that's how the stiffness works. And once you lock something, it is gone. But you can also limit your bones. Suppose you don't actually, you want your bone to rotate on the X, but you don't want it to rotate too much. If I grab the target and you see that it is rotating way too much, I just want to limit my rotation till over there for the X. So I can just select this bone, I can say limit it on the X, and you get this really handy circle for yourself. Now I can just increase the minimum, so that, and let's decrease the maximum. So let's just make both of them same. So negative so let's say negative 30 and positive 30. Now if I grab the target bone and if I make it rotate, you'll see that that bone stays within the 30-degree limit and it is not moving after that at all. um, you can limit also, you can also stop them by limiting them to 0 degree. Let's limit the z to the 0 as well. Now it will only rotate on the X and also within that limit of 30 degree. So as you can see, my bone is clamped within that limit. So that's cool. You can also make it limit at the same time in this virtual sphere. So as you can see that we can see a temporary area of influence, or you can say area of the movement. So I can just grab it and it will stay in that area of influence. So this is really handy when you have some complex machineries or mechanical rigs. Really great tool, inverse kinematics. Now this is done. Is there anything else? Okay, so weight position. Now if I disable this and let's grab it, you'll see that nothing is happening right now, because my inverse kinematics, it is not controlling the weight anymore. So this weight, it actually makes sure how much bones are going to follow each other. People usually keep this weight at 1, and if you enable the rotation as well, the rotation of the target matters. So as you can see, I can rotate my target bone. So now usually I have never seen people use this before, but now the position of the target and the rotation of the target is mattering in the situation. So I'll have to be really careful with what my rotation of target is. So this is also one of the way you can use the IK rig for your advantage. So basically making only one bone as a control bone of everything. So let us select our IK bone again. And if we can just make these rotation 0. Now the influence over here, it is basically a toggle for you to turn this constraint on and off. Now in some complex rigs, there is such thing as turning off IK and turning on IK. So you can basically do that with this, and also you can animate this value. So suppose if you are animating and suddenly you don't need IK anymore, so you could just animate this value till that point and then you can turn it off, animate your FK. So basically if you'll turn it off, it will become FK, and then you can just rotate it as you please, and then again get back into the IK action. Also when your IK is enabled, you cannot move this bone anymore. Like if I press G, as you can see, It is rotating, but it is not moving at all. It will always stick to the target. So yeah, that's how you use inverse kinematics bone constraint. Now you can add multiple bone constraints to the multiple rigs. Like I can duplicate this one, I can add more bones inside them. I can may even make this bone as a target of separate other rig, and you can create some complex shape with those. So in this video, I was just going to in general give the idea how the IK constraint works in Blender. So yeah, I hope this video helped. And if you want to check out more example related videos on this, then I do have a rigging tutorial series playlist. Link will be in the description below. Also, there will be a playlist available for all the constraints that I'm talking about right now. In this video, we talked about inverse kinematics. In future, we will look at the locked track. So for that video, you have to subscribe to the channel, ring the bell icon so that you know when that video drops. Also, to support me making more such videos, you can either support me financially on Ko-fi. You'll get project files over there, not this one though, because these are pretty basics, but there are other videos that I have done and they have their project files. Or you can just like this video and share it with your friends. So yeah, thank you all so much for watching. I hope this video helped in your project. I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.